Hi, on the call today is Cameron Asher. He's a recent graduate from the University of Kentucky. He majored in business management with the goal of someday going into healthcare entrepreneurship. Cameron has a passion for helping others through his own personal experience of overcoming traumatic brain injury. Cameron is a very driven individual, and I'm honored to have him on the podcast today. Tell us a little bit more about your accident and the situation you were in.
Well, Jessica, thanks for having me on here. My accident occurred on February 25th, 2016 at Somerset Community College in Laurel County, Kentucky. My friend and I were leaving class that day, and someone was texting and driving, ran a red light, and then hit the car on the driver's side, and the driver unfortunately passed away, and that resulted in my brain injury as well as it threw us together.
Okay. And you mentioned it was a severe brain injury. And can you tell us a little bit more about the first responders and how you were eventually taken to the hospital?
Yeah, so on the scene, the air evac team was on their way, and local paramedics would have worked on me. I later met one of my first responders, and he really talked about how he was kind of moved by our situation, though he sees so many of them, and how he prayed over me. And then when air evac finally arrived, um, I was flown to the University of Kentucky, um, probably coded a few times in the helicopter because my injuries were so severe. And then I finally arrived, and I had an extremely experienced neurosurgeon that was able to work on me. Um, I know my surgeon said that I was pretty much a miracle to my parents, is what he told them. That it's really rare that you see someone with like the extremity of injuries that I had survive. And then, when it came to like further recovery, all they could tell my parents was, we'll see what happens.
So they had hope that you would get better, but they weren't quite sure what the results would be at the end.
Right.
Okay. And well, that's good news that you came through it so as well as you did. So do you remember what where you were when you woke up?
So the first memories I have, I know that I was awake based on what my parents have told me, but I guess I've forgotten, the first initial stages at UK Healthcare. Um, I kind of have one really bleak memory of, feeling like, you know, I knew what happened, and, that everything was kind of happened for a reason, but that's like the only beginning memory I have at UK Healthcare. The first memories that I have that are really, like vivid and formed are like at Cardinal Hill. So I remember the rehabilitative process, and, really I felt every day that, I was lucky to have a second chance at life. The person that I was with unfortunately didn't have that. And I didn't allow myself to get down in those times, and I tried to pull out strength that I didn't even know that I had, in honor of the person that was lost, and in honor of the fact that I had something that a lot of people have the opportunity to receive.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Doing something with that second chance, and it sounds like you're on the road to do that. So you've already made great strides. Can you tell me a little bit about what you said you can you tell me about your decision to start school on time and finish on time? I know you had just been you got admitted to the University of Kentucky around that time of the accident.
Right. I had gotten admitted to the University of Kentucky and received one scholarship, and then towards the end of the year at my high school, like our high school does this ceremony where everyone who gets scholarships gets them, and their families come. I'd received another scholarship actually from UK, so that was really nice. Um, uh, yeah, so I had gotten all those scholarships, and then I was coming up to the University of Kentucky Healthcare. At the time, I'd had staples in my head. I guess it was like to make sure that everything heals back together like pretty well. Um, and then I came to get those staples removed around this time. And the now assistant vice president of philanthropy at the University of Kentucky, his name is Don Witt, had invited my family out to lunch at the Hillary Boone Center, which is just a really like nice place on campus that they host scholarship dinners and stuff usually. And he was like really he had been encouraging through the whole process, before this, and this was, I mean, just this was not out of character for him to, be this generous. So we were sitting down, and he had had a lot of people with him who were from different, backgrounds, just, who had wrote me and was just getting to see like how far I had come. Well, I just felt moved in that moment, and I felt honestly a drive more than ever to be bigger than my situation and to help people. And I just saw the generosity and the selflessness I had received from UK, and I kind of thought like, well, if I stay at home and dwell on this, what if I get complacent? What if, my brain doesn't heal? I would rather like risk pushing myself and, rather than getting complacent and giving up. So I looked at my family and everyone around me. I said, I think I want to come to UK on time still, and I'm going to graduate on time still. And everyone was like, you could hear a pin drop in the room when I did that. It was, I mean, looking back, it was an extremely brave move, knowing what I know now about, brain injury and learning and things like that. But I think it did make me better.
Yeah, it
Through
sounds like
that.
it. And
Yeah.
what point of your recovery were you at when you met with him and made that decision?
So, um, I believe I had been So this was after I think this was after I got my second, like this, my bone slash Kevlar infused piece put back into my head. Because, for a while I had lived with like just a little helmet on my head, like to protect this side of my head and
Yeah.
whatnot. Um, I was, so yeah, I think it was right after I got my second bone put in, and then, they had to so like keep it together for a while. So they used the staples, I think is what it was.
And how long after the accident was this?
Um, I think this probably would have been, let's see, 2 to 3 months or something like that. I
Okay,
could
so
get an exact date, but
oh no, that's okay. Just a roundabout figure was great. And so 2 to 3 months after that severe brain injury, and you're starting to get better, and you decide, you met with Don, and he inspired you. It sounds like your family and all the recovery and the people that were involved in that recovery inspired you to do something with that second chance and finish college on time, is what I'm hearing. And so yeah, so wonderful. And it sounds like you were very thankful to all the staff, and you decided to do something with that. So can you tell me like how that went, your school and study skills, and what helped you finish school on time?
yeah. So fortunately, you know, I talked about how Don was always an encouragement. I had so many people at the University of Kentucky cheering me on, like telling me I can do it from, just the moment that I stepped on campus. All these like much older than me, very successful individuals really pushed me to be the best version of myself. So I think it's important to begin by saying, like, I didn't go into this journey alone, and I didn't want to be alone. I wanted people's support. I wanted to be vulnerable with people, and a lot of people are scared of that, but I think it changed my life. And the reason I needed to be vulnerable and have these people in my life is because of how strenuous my work ethic was. I would study some weeks 100 hours a week or so, depending on what I had to do. Towards the end of my college, I've worked a job. I was involved in two really, really important organizations on campus called the Student Philanthropy Board and the Alumni Ambassadors, which is through the Office of the President. And then I've been writing on a book for a while. and I've been involved in various UK media, as you saw. So I've really pushed myself to the limit. But I always had people there like chiming in, cheering me on, telling me they believe in me. Like even when things got hard or I did bad on an exam or I was beating myself up like wishing I could do more than I possibly could at that moment because I knew deep inside I was gonna have to push myself harder because I was set back a little bit in life. Um, but everyone kind of helped me see that that was okay. That wasn't something that I could always see. So that allowed me to stay working so hard. That allowed me to continue to push people. That allowed me to have that open heart to where I wanted to be selfless and reach out to people who I saw were even sad. Like if I saw someone like crying in like a classroom building, I'm the kind of person that would stop and talk to it. Like that, all those behaviors were fostered from like my early life experiences, but they were really I guess saved. I think by a lot of the staff at UK that were cheering me on.
Okay, wonderful. And you mentioned, did you require any kind of accommodations? It sounds like you studied a whole lot to compensate for some of the things that happened with your severe brain injury. Um, so just those study skills, and you mentioned other people. Did you have to get any accommodations, and how did you feel about that?
Yeah, so adjusting my study skills, I read things again and again and again, like nonstop. Like I would probably read one section of a textbook like 6 times for an exam, which was a lot to a normal person, but like it really helped solidify information in my brain. Like long term, I was doing pretty good with like recollection. So the more I continued to build on like short term things, the better it got for me in a sense. But in terms of testing accommodations and stuff, um, my freshman year, I didn't go for the attesting accommodations thing and I actually knew about something called the Disability Resource Center. I think a lot of schools have something pretty similar to this because I even took one class over the summer at a community college and was still able to receive, those kind of like benefits. But in UK, it's called the Disability Resource Center. Um, I eventually got extra time and I got my exams in 2 parts and I could rest in between the 2 parts. And I was in a quiet, low distraction environment.
Good.
All of these things were very good for me, especially like given the nature of traumatic brain injury. A lot of people can become more easily distracted. A lot of people can, get kind of. We need more time to process our thoughts and really dig deep. We have to you can imagine like zooming into my brain. When I'm thinking through things because I have to think extremely hard sometimes. But all those things made me a better test taker once I finally like dropped my pride and got enrolled with the DRC. And I would encourage anyone who's a student to look into those resources through their college. That's pertinent, I think, almost with traumatic brain injury. A lot of people kind of don't want to do that. I mean, I understand, you want to, your pride wants you to think that it makes you weak or something, but it doesn't. If anything, it's the best decision you'll make, and it'll probably change your education more than you'll realize.
Now you mentioned you had that goal of finishing school in 4 years. Can you tell me if you how you accomplished or when you accomplished finishing that last class and graduating?
Yeah. So I finished this May, I mean, the beginning of the month. I remember taking my last exam and like dancing around my apartment because it was finally, I made it. That's everything that I had accomplished. I set out to accomplish, not without, setbacks or not without struggle, but I made it this May, and now I'm looking forward to, life after graduation, and I know I'm still gonna have to be careful with my decisions because like I am disadvantaged as a byproduct of this, but I think that if I could do what I've done with my education, with my brain working against me even, I think I can accomplish anything.
So when did you decide you wanted to go into business and start a healthcare clinic to contribute to your community in a larger way? Can you tell me more
Yeah.
about that?
So that's a long. So I had wanted for the longest time to be a physician. I started UK as biosystems engineering, um, which I had never taken calculus before. So the first time I took calculus, that went out the window. But then I switched to neuroscience, and I had to take calculus, a second time with that. But I did good in the calculus the second time around because I was like, okay, I kind of know what's going on now. I know how to study for this. So that was my first big upset, failing calculus. The first time I took it, but I did great in it the second time around. Um, so then I was a neuroscience major. I was working up until that, but then I started seeing how more research driven it was. And I remember standing up in one of my seminar classes, and my presentation was over like clinical outcomes, clinical business models of clinics such as like Mayo Clinic and things like that. And, you know, a lot of things that people, that were more research driven were probably kind of bored by. So then, I just kind of realized how different I was than I guess the rest of the STEM community. So then, I had already finished pretty much most of my pre-med classes by this time. I think besides biochem and physics two. That's what I can think of off the top of my head. So, I had already taken most of those, and I was just like, I really didn't feel like I fit in. So then I switched to business management, and I started learning about stuff that it was more interesting to me. And then I learned about the Masters in Healthcare Administration, and that's what I've been currently working on my application for.
Wonderful. Um, so that sounds wonderful. I know that now, can you take us back to what made you so resilient? What do you feel like brought that great empathy that you have, besides having the severe brain injury? It sounds like maybe something in your past or your upbringing has something to do with it.
Yeah, so I'd say my resiliency comes from my father. My father's father passed away when he was, I think my dad was 16 to 18, something along those lines. Um, my dad had to raise his two brothers and take care of his mom as well from a very young age. The man literally worked hard his entire life, and he was in college at the time. So I think he was actually 18, yeah. So he was in college at the time, and he had to quit. Um, so, my dad always worked hard and he never complained and he wanted to give the best for his family. And like I think that's what where my resiliency came from. I saw that no matter how hard the world pushed against my dad, there was something stronger inside of him that was always allowing him to push back. So my dad's one of my great role models in my life. And then I would say my empathy came from my grandmother, and she was even resilient herself. My grandmother was a very loving person. She was always like who I listened to, like who I talked to about my issues. um, I stayed with her a lot when I was little after my parents had split up, and then I was living with my dad. My dad worked all the time, so I would go see my grandmother and just talk to her about like just life in general, and she always listened to me. And then um, one of my cousins' dads was in school, respiratory therapy school at the time, so she stayed with her a lot as well. So, it was just us with our grandma talking to her. And I mean, she knew everything that I ever went through, but she was always right there for me, like through everything. Even when like my parents were going through the process of splitting up, when I would see my grandmother, she would be all ears. So I think that made me have a bigger heart for people, is just seeing how selfless she was in a lot of her, things in life. And I remember at one point, um, my grandmother was so intent on taking care of people, she was doing her mom's laundry, um, like while she had cancer. Like she had cancer, her mom didn't, but she still was doing laundry while she, was suffering through all of that. Like she was one of the hardest working people. And I remember hearing about that and I was just like, wow. So
Just that
Yeah,
care for other people and
yeah,
wanting to give something back to family because
yeah.
she
And
could.
I think I adapted that beyond family even. I see
Yeah.
so many people in the world struggling now that, I've paid attention to it. And, I even know what I've went through. And I don't want anyone to ever feel the way that I felt in the time that I felt, how I felt. So now that I've learned what I've learned, I want to use my experiences to help other people adapt theirs so they can probably better heal.
Yeah. And you mentioned, so what does that look like to you? You mentioned giving back and maybe helping people that have went through something similar to you. Um, how do you plan on using the education that you received and giving back? And what does that look like?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, I want to continue to use my voice. UK really empowered me to use my voice and my story for good. Um, I've really worked on my speaking a lot. I've really worked on my book a lot. It's coming along. Really hard to actually sit down and write a book yourself without anyone like assisting you. But I think I'm doing well with it. I want to someday finish that and publish it. I think I'll self-publish through Amazon maybe, but I'm not sure. Um, but then, going beyond that, my degrees are preparing me to be a more phenomenal leader in the healthcare industry. Um, my undergraduate degree really taught me about like ways to empower people, theories of management, things like that, all things that are very like you can see like a proven track record of success in those kind of theories. And then my graduate degree is going to teach me everything and beyond in the scope of healthcare. So like biostatistics, things like that. And I look forward to like those kinds of lessons. And then I've also got things that I've researched on my own that have really like increased my vision. There's a clinic in Lexington called Surgery on Sunday. I want to make sure to promote this. My understanding is they do low to reduced cost, like almost like zero to reduced cost surgeries for those with proven financial need. I would someday love to start my own hospital, as I've said, and I would love for an entire, I guess, area of the hospital to be dedicated to that nonprofit mission. I would, like, there's a lot of ways, you could incentivize like doctors to come in and do a free surgery. Um, I think that is probably like the future of healthcare equity. I don't think I think that I mean that's like our best way to meet the needs of Kentucky too. Where I'm from, the average income is like $20,000 a year, or it's just extremely low. It's like probably barely above the poverty line, maybe.
And what
And
county did you come from?
I'm from Clay County, Kentucky, so that's Manchester. So you know, all of those things combined, have really given me a vision to not only have state of the art healthcare like I've seen UK has, but, even like ways to meet those in need.
Yeah, and maybe bring some of those services back to where you grew up and seeing that
Right.
need there,
Exactly.
and the need for more nonprofit groups that are helping serve that community.
Exactly.
Wonderful. And we really look forward to hearing more about your book. And once you have that published, I'll help you get it out. We'll maybe do another podcast again with you.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Wonderful. Sorry, let me hit end recording.
It's okay.
I'll end this last part out.
I really worked last night too. I